Well, it's almost 9:30. Come back on. This is Brother David Harrison on the back porch this morning on a Monday. Just saw some of you a few minutes ago. We did our 10-minute podcast. Somebody asked me, said, why do you do 10 minutes and then come back on a little bit later? Well, the 10-minute podcast is a daily thing I'm doing every day. And the reason I do the 10-minute podcast is because 10 minutes I'm able to have just a short message. And for folks that maybe don't listen to an hour podcast, people just passing by my page that aren't followers, that may find my Facebook page and listen to a brief 10-minute message. It'll have the gospel in it. Sometimes it's just the gospel. Sometimes it's about something that this morning I talked about saving faith and living faith. And so somebody that's just passing by my Facebook page and to see that 10 minutes in the Word and turn it on may listen to 5, 6, 7 minutes of a short message. And so I do them every day to fill my Facebook and my YouTube page with brief messages that somebody that doesn't have a lot of time can listen. And hey, Brother Mark, hello, yes. And Brother Mark just sent me a message. Brother Mark Randolph, he's on vacation. And so I'll answer him when I get off of this podcast. But this is on the back porch. I do this a lot, just having a good time, play my guitar and talk about whatever I want to talk about revival or the Bible or tell stories or whatever. So give everybody a few minutes to get tuned in. It's just now turning 9:30. So I'm going to sing a couple songs this morning. An old song that I don't know if some of you have even ever heard of it before. Some of you old timers may. I was talking a little while ago, we was talking about old wives' tales and traditions. We got up this morning, there was another, not as bad a fog, but a little fog here this morning in August in East Tennessee. And my mom and daddy and all the old timers used to follow the almanac and old wives' tales and stuff. And they always used to say, you count the number of fogs in August, and that's how many snows you'll have in the wintertime. And we've already had several big fogs here in August and in East Tennessee. My friend Miss Judy Ely, she came by the other day, we were talking, and she had mentioned about the big fog. She's 85, and she still holds on to that old fogs, tells how many snows will be in the wintertime. And I know some of you young folks are listening, she said, what in the world is he talking about? You don't have a clue, but us old folks was raised in that. And my mom and daddy lived by the old wives' tales. And the sun, at night, if the sunrise, sunset, if it was a dark, deep red sunset, Daddy said it's going to be cold in the morning. Boy, it's going to be a bad frost and cold in the fall and winter time. Especially in the winter, it'd be a big, dark, deep red sunset. And he'd say, boy, it's going to be cold in the morning. And they'd judge by the sky, and they'd judge by the weather, and they always planned it, and everything they did by the almanac. And a lot of folks still buy Little Richard's Almanac. It's been around for, I guess, way over 100 years. And it has a lot of good stuff in it. It used to have a lot of things about recipes and things to do for, wash stings, things like this. This little anecdotes and things, stories, funny stories and jokes and stories from the past. But it has a lot to do with, it's horoscope. It's all that stuff that's basically witchcraft, horoscope, reading the stars. And we don't do that and practice that as Christians. But a lot of old folks still follow the almanac and the sign of the moon and the stars to plant by. And they won't go to the dentist if the sign's in the head. I mean, I've not plant the corn in the growing of the moon. I've heard all that. And you judge the number of snows by the number of frosting, the number of fogs in August. And so we laughed about it. We come up this morning, standing there at the sink and talking. And I was eating a little sourdough biscuit with some butter, and she was drinking her coffee. And we looked out and the fog was settling, and I said, well, that's going to be another snow. And she was laughing. She said, I never heard that until Judy mentioned it the other day. I said, you're serious? She said, no, I never heard that until she mentioned it. I said, man, that was all my mom and daddy, they lived by that stuff. Fogs in August, you count the number of fogs, and they'd tell the number of snows. And us kids were excited. Every time we saw a fog in August, we was excited because that meant we was going to have a snow. And we love snow. That meant we'd be out of school. So anyway, I don't know how I got started off on that, but just old wise tales. And that's what I do on the back porch. We just talk about whatever. We talk about things in the past. I've had some fun in my life. And where I was raised up in old country home, my grandparents, the Harrison side, my daddy's parents, I knew my grandmother. I was young when she died. But I remember going to her house. She lived in a little log cabin way out in the country. And I do remember going there. We couldn't drive the car in. We had to park the car out at the dirt road and had to walk down the long driveway through the woods because it was so rutted out. And there's no way you could take a tractor but couldn't take the car in there. And Daddy had a brand new, it was a new 59 Chevy, I guess, 59, 60 Chevy. And it was in 1960, I remember. I was just a young boy, I remember it. And going to Grandma's, and I remember her hanging up clothes out there on the wash line, out behind the fireplace. On that one end was a big fireplace. And I remember seeing my grandma, and my uncle and aunt lived with her, Uncle Lace and Aunt Becky. And then that other guy that lived with them, I can't remember his name, Jack. Jack was there. Jack lived with them for years. And he was this single man, an old bachelor, and he lived with them for years. And they'd sit around that fireplace, and they'd spit tobacco. They chewed tobacco and dipped snuff. And my grandma put her fingers up to her mouth, and she'd spit in that fire, and you hear it sizzle. And I remember watching them and thought that was so funny. And that was back when Chubby Checkers had just come on the scene. And he was doing that dance, the twist. Come on, let's twist, that song, the twist. And I was just a little boy, and I would do the twist as a little boy. And they thought that was so funny. And I remember my Uncle Ace said, he called me Bucky. He said, Bucky, I'll give you a dime if you'll do the twist. And I started doing the twist, and they just laughed. Well, I didn't care. I'd get a dime, man alive. That's a little bag of candy for me. And he always swapped pocket knives. We'd go up there and sit, and he'd bring out his pocket knives. And Daddy'd always give me a little pocket knife from the time I was old enough to walk. I had a pocket knife, a little buck knife, and he'd pull it out, and he'd sharpen it for me. And he'd say, you want to trade? I said, no. I said, Daddy, give me this, and I can't trade. He said, well, get one you can trade. Come up and trade. We'd trade. Finally, I got older. We'd trade knives. I'd go up there, and I was older. I said, what you got, Lace? What you got, Lace? His name was Lacey. Uncle Lacey. We called him Lace. And he always wore bib overalls, and most time he didn't wear no shirt underneath it. So just a pair of bib overalls and Brogan shoes. Y'all know what Brogans are. Some of you older folks, you better know. No socks, just Brogan shoes and a pair of coveralls. And he'd say, Bucky, what you got to trade? I'd pull out a pocket knife. I said, I'll trade this, and he'd be an old timer or be a buck knife or something, and we'd swap. And we had a corn crib out there we played in. And I remember playing around that old fireplace, and we'd have reunions. You go up there, and all the family come in. I had an Uncle Odell. His name was Joseph Odell. We called him Uncle Odell. And he had 12 kids, 12 or 13. He had a couple that died, but had big family. He'd come driving up in a big station wagon, and all them kids come rolling out. And I remember every time you'd get in, you'd hear them calling their names, like going down a list of all the names, make sure everybody was in the car. Never seen such a bunch of kids. My daddy worried over them. They were poor, didn't have food half the time. And I've seen my mom and daddy pack up groceries, go over and take them groceries and feed them kids, and just kids everywhere. And I remember that, just the old-timer stuff, and sit around here and talk. And of course, all my family was musical, the Harrison family. My Uncle Odell was probably one of the best guitar players I ever knew. He played a Gretsch country gentleman guitar about like Chet Atkins did, and my brother plays that style he can play. And then my mama's side was all musical. My mama played the guitar, and her family, her sister's boy, Billy, or Bill, now he goes by Bill Balcom, is one of the best jazz and blues and rock guitarists, and he was in music for years in the music industry, just an awesome guitar player. So me and my brother learned from both sides of our family. We had talent, musical talent. And I remember that as a boy, come up around all that, and I'd hear all these wise tales, and they'd tell all this stuff, and they had all kinds of cures. I remember I'd get stung. I'd be out there working with my daddy, get stung with a wasp, and Daddy'd stick tobacco juice and put tobacco juice on a bee sting. And I mean, no tobacco spit. I mean, I'm not being ugly, but that's what they had. They put tobacco spit, or I've seen Mama go get butter or lard and put on a wasp, a bee sting. And we just, had what we had and used what we used. But they'd tell all kinds of stuff, all kinds of wise tales, just like the fogs in August tells how many snows there'll be in the winter. And they'd read the signs, and say, well, it's going to be this or that. And I don't go by that stuff, and most of you never heard of that stuff, but that's the way I was raised. And, I look at it back now and realize it's just, I remember this. Now, I'm going to tell you this, and you can believe it or not, But I remember my brother one time got the thresh in his mouth. Some of y'all remember children used to get the thresh. It's like a yeast, but it was a thresh, and they'd burn, to scream with fire, mouth be on fire, get the thresh, and it was contagious. It was like a infection is what it was. But I remember Daddy had a man come in when my brother had the thresh, and he spoke fire out of his mouth. And I know that's witchcraft. I know that. I didn't know that then, and my mom and daddy didn't. But he'd come in and he'd speak fire out of my brother's mouth. It was an incantation is what it was, is witchcraft. But he'd spoke fire out of my brother's mouth. And warts. You get a wart on your hand, and Daddy said, well, I'll get that man to come spit that wart off. And he'd put his finger on it, he'd say a few words and say some things and get rid of that wart. That was witchcraft. That's how people in the country, in these mountains, I was raised. And we went all that stuff. You remember that, Brother Butcher. You remember all those things. And I mean, I've seen them. I've seen them speak warts off and speak fire out of children's mouth that had the thresh. And you say, did it work? Well, it did. But witchcraft and Satan has power. You remember when Moses started doing miracles in front of Pharaoh. Pharaoh called his witch doctors and all of his astrologers, and they did the same magic and same stuff that Moses did. Satan's got power to perform miracles. Don't ever doubt that. So when you hear people talk about things like that, and you say, well, how can that work? You know, that's not real. Yeah, well, it is real. Satan's real. And that stuff is witchcraft. And, and since I got older and God saved me and showed me all that stuff, I preached against that stuff. And I made a lot of people mad when I first started preaching, because I'd preach against basically the way we was raised. And I preached it in a nice way, to the fact that most of us did it in ignorance. My mom and daddy, they did it in ignorance. That's just the way that's taught. It's passed down from generations. We come across from Europe. My family came over here in the 1600s on a ship. I traced my family back. We came over in a ship and settled in northern Virginia, or southern Virginia, northern North Carolina. Then on the border and worked our way down through central North Carolina. But that was the Harrisons, came over in 1600. And my family, one of the Harrison presidents is in my line. Both of them are, but one of them in my direct line, William Henry Harrison, is in my lineage. And we traced all that back to when we come over here from Europe. And so, but we brought all that stuff with us, and all that stuff was just from the old country, and it was witchcraft and traditions and just a lot of heathenism. That's what it was, is just heathenism, but that was how they were taught. They didn't have all the medical doctors we have now, so they had to use things that they knew wasn't like casting a spell, but I guess it was. But when I got called to preach and started preaching that stuff, I mean, I made a lot of family members mad because they thought I was picking on them. I wasn't. I was just trying to enlighten them, because I tried to tell them that now, you can't do that stuff and be right with God. You can't get somebody to come in and speak warts off your fingers. Go to the store and get you some wart remover. That stuff works. It's good, and you're not messing with Satanism. So I don't know how I got off on that, but just talking about the fogs this morning and the tales of people judging the weather and predicting the future by the weather. And so that's the way a lot of people are raised up. And so as you meet people, especially old people, and hear them say stuff like that, don't condemn them, but try to be patient with them and enlighten them. They get saved, you can teach them. But some of those things are really contrary to God's word. And so, but anyway, that's just old time way. But I'm not ashamed of my heritage. I had a great heritage. My daddy was he was a drunk, but when he wasn't drinking, he was a hard worker. But my mama was a godly woman. She got saved as a teenager, and she raised us in the fear of God and taught us right. My daddy got saved. Didn't live long after he got saved. He died at 57, right before he turned 58. He died in November and would have been 58 in December 7th, matter of fact. His birthday's on Pearl Harbor Day, December the 7th. And but he died at a young age, just lived a rough life and drunk and spent a wicked life. But Mama married him, she was saved and he wasn't. And she married him. He was the bad boy image. He was a motorcycle gang member. He rode an old Harley Davidson, and she fell in love with him, and she wasn't right to marry a lost man, but she married him, and she had to reap some things because of her decision, and she lived a hard life. He put her through literal hell on earth, and she had us 3 kids, and we suffered a lot because of alcohol, and I grew up to hate alcohol. My daddy, I was the baby, And my daddy get so mad at me, but I'd find his alcohol, I'd find his bottles, and I'd bust them. And he'd say, Bucky, he called me Bucky. He said, Bucky, I'm going to whip you. I said, well, Daddy, I hate that stuff, and if I find it, I'm going to break it. He never would. He knew I was right. And he'd get drunk and wouldn't pay the bills, and Mama needed money. Well, I'd go in his billfold and get money out of his billfold and give it to Mama. So that way Mama wouldn't be to blame. And if he'd get to asking and say, somebody take money out of my billfold, I say, yeah, I did. Mama needed some money, and I got it out of your billfold. He'd get so mad at me, but I was the baby, and somehow or another, I dodged a lot of bullets from him. But he did get angry with me. And a lot of times he turned on and pulled a knife on me one time when I was a teenager. And I always told him, I said, you do that when I'm little, but there'll come a day you won't. And I'm sorry to say that day come when I was 14, and he pulled a knife on my mom and was going to cut her. And I stood in between him and her, and he threatened to cut me and put a knife to my throat. And I went wild, and I jumped on top of him, took the knife away, and Mama and my brother pulled me off of him, and I regretted that day. And I apologized, and I was wrong in doing that, but I always thought that God would judge me for that. But a man, before I was really struggling with it when I started in Bible college. I always thought, I heard Oliver B. Green talk about dishonoring his parents, and that he knew he wouldn't live to be an old man. And I thought, well, I did that to my daddy, and I'm not going to live to be old. And an old man got me in the altar one night, and he asked me, he said, what's bothering you? And I'd already surrendered to preach, and I was in Bible college, and I told him the story I just told you. And he said, well, son, he said, there's a verse in the Bible. He said, I'm not saying what you did was right, but he said, the Bible says, fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. And I said, your daddy provoked you. So he said, I don't think God's going to hold you accountable for that. He said, you repented, you've asked God to forgive you. But he said, I don't think God's going to cut years off your life for that. He said, you didn't dishonor your daddy. He said, you probably shouldn't have done that and hit him. But he said, he provoked you and you was defending yourself. And he released me from the bondage I was in over that. And, of course, my daddy went to early grave, and I was sorry when he died. I was glad the nightmare was over. We had suffered so long, all the things he'd done, but still yet part of me being his son missed him, and I still do today. I believe he's saved. I believe he's in heaven. I believe he got right. He didn't live for God very long and had an unstable Christian life. But that's the way I was raised. And, you know, when I think about all that and now where I'm at now and what God's done for me and given me, I left home when I was 16, moved in with my grandmother, and I was traveling and singing gospel music and working. I went to work. I'd been working since I was a young boy, went to public work at 12, but at 16 I was working in the factory my mother worked at, and I was going to school, and I'd work 4 hours. They let me work 4 hours. I was in the DE program, distributive education, which was to be, you'd go in and learn about work and things, and it was a class, but you could go to school a half a day and then work a half a night. And so I got a job in Collins and Aitman, which was an automotive plant there in Albemarle. My mother worked there. My daddy worked there before he died. And so I worked there 4 hours a night and go to school in the daytime. And then I met my wife my senior year, and I was already working a full-time job. And so we got married my senior year. But I'd moved in with my grandmother, and I was working down Albemarle because we lived about an hour from Albemarle. So I wanted to work and go to school, so I moved in with my grandmother. She was only about 2 miles from Collins and Aitman's. So I lived with her my senior year. I got married, then we moved to Kannapolis, and me and my wife got an apartment and started on our own my senior year. And in 1973, we got married in 1974. We moved in our apartment in 73, and I finished school in 74. And so that was my senior year. But anyway, we've had a good life, and all that I went through and didn't have and didn't enjoy as a boy, that God's given me now, and God called me to preach. And as a preacher, I can also say God's blessed me more than anybody I know. And we've always had clothes to wear and food to eat, and we've always had a nice home to live in. We lived in a mobile home for like 15, 16, 17 years. But I had to build onto it, and it was nice. And I raised my family in that mobile home in Kannapolis, and we lived there and had everything we needed. And then God let us buy our first house after we moved out of that, and then God let us buy another house. And then we moved here and bought this house, and we've got a nice place, thank the Lord. And since I'm kind of semi-retired now and took off 2.5 year sabbatical because of cancer, fixing to start back on the road here in a couple of weeks. I'll start a camp meeting up in LaGrange, Kentucky. But God's been good to me, raised my children, and we've had everything we've needed. not had everything we wanted, but most everything. And so now I'm sitting here, and God's touched me with cancer, and I'm just happy to be alive and happy to come to you by way of social media. Just never would have thought years ago I could speak to the world from a little phone on my back porch, and that's just amazing. So, well, I got an old song this morning, since we're talking about old-time stuff. I don't know, some of you, Brother Butcher, you may have heard this before. Some of you that are older, I sung this as one of my first songs I sung as a little boy. When I was but a boy, in days of childhood, I used to play till evening shadows come. Then winding down an old familiar pathway, I heard my mother call that set of sun. Come home, it's supper time. The shadows lengthen fast. Come home, it's supper time. We're going home at last. In visions now I see her standing yonder, and her familiar voice I hear once more. Here's the part I like. The banquet table's ready up in heaven. Yes, it is. It's supper time upon that golden shore. Come home, it's supper time. The shadows lengthen fast. Come home, it's supper time. Here we're going home at last. We're going home at last. Supper time. You remember that? Faye, you remember that song? That's about as old as time, man. I sung that as a little boy, and what brought me to think about this morning, I was thinking about the old time way, and got talking about them fogs and snows and all the old wise tales. And that song come to my heart. I got thinking about my mama and my daddy and all my family that's in heaven, my grandparents, and got thinking about that old log cabin where my grandma Harrison lived. And we'd go up there and play around the old corn crib and out there in the woods. And they didn't have a well, they had a spring. And I remember Uncle Ace would say, or my Aunt Becky or my grandma would say, take that bucket down there and go to the spring and get us a fresh bucket of water. And I'd go down to the spring, and it was a big spring and had it rocked around, and it's pretty deep. And you'd have to take and brush the leaves away. Sometimes the leaves would fall on top of the spring water, and you just kind of take the leaves back and wipe the leaves away, and then take that dipper. It had an old aluminum dipper, tin dipper, and it was just old tin dipper they kept clean. And I'd dip that bucket full, and I'd stick that dipper down in that cold spring water. It was as cold as ice. And I'd dip that dipper down there and drink that on a hot day. As young as get to playing, and go down there in the spring and get a dipper of water. They kept a dipper down at the spring, and then the bucket had a dipper in it. Of course, there's dippers in the house hanging there around where they wash the face. Had a big wash pan where you washed your face and where you got your dishes and stuff cleaned up. And I remember that old spring, and we'd catch spring lizards out of that spring and play with them. I still remember that like it's yesterday, and that's been 65 years ago. 65 years ago, I guess, when I remember as far back as that. And all my uncles and aunts and cousins, and a lot of them's in heaven now, a lot of them's not in heaven, I'm sad to say. I'm sure a lot of my family went to hell lost, just a bunch of moonshiners. I mean, my daddy, when I was just a young boy, taught me how to tell good moonshine liquor from bad. Take it and pour a little bit in a spoon and light it a fire. And if it burned a blue flame, it was good white liquor. If it burned any other color beside a blue flame, it had something else in it, lead or something wasn't supposed to be in it. He said, leave that alone. Well, I didn't care about that. I hated liquor. But he thought I needed to know that. And just stuff like that I remember. And now as a preacher, I look back and say, you know, how fortunate and blessed I am to be raised in that lifestyle out of that kind of background, and God would save me and call me to preach. You talking about mercy? You talking about gratitude, thankfulness? You talking about a man that's blessed? Because by all rights, I ought to have been a drunk and I ought to be in hell. By all rights, with everything that I was raised in and all my background, I should never have been a preacher. But God in His mercy, how many Harrisons are preachers out of my family? I've got on my side. And then my daughter, some of my daughters have married preachers, and I've got a grandson that's a preacher. And my son's a preacher. And then I got cousins that are preachers. I got several cousins that are preachers. A bunch of my cousins were preachers from the Harrison side. And man alive, how blessed I am. And some of you may not have been raised like that. Some of you young folks, you don't have a clue anything I've talked about. But honest before the Lord, to come out of that kind of background and to be able to sit before you on a podcast this morning and talk about the good things of God and sing the songs of Zion, wow, I could almost shout right here on my back porch. Got a tractor trailer going by. That's very rare. You don't hear that kind of noise out here very often. There's probably a dump truck. Somebody's probably doing some construction in here. Because that's the only trucks come on that road out there. It'd be a dump truck or a truck hauling heavy equipment. So somebody's probably doing some work. But you don't hear, it's like this now, quiet. You hear the crickets and the tree frogs and the katydids, what I call them katydids, and you hear the birds. That's all you hear out here. I mean, it's quiet. I'm on my back porch, and you can look around. Let's see here if we can just do this a little bit. See if I can turn this around. That's my back. This is my backyard. I mean, there's my shop out there. It's my backyard. It's trees, and over there's my neighbor's house. But this is where I live. Back here's the other woods over here. Got woods and the house across the valley over there. So I mean, I'm out here in the country. We're not far from town, city limits, but we're not in the city limits. So we're out here on the edge of Kingsport. And man, I'm talking about being blessed. And we found this house when I moved out here almost 10 years ago. Mark, first name was Mark, had the house for sale, the owner. And we walked in and we knew right then that was the house God had for us. And he told me what he wanted for it. And I told him, I said, well, we're moving to North Carolina. I said, I'm coming out here to take a church, help him out for a couple of years. And I said, I don't want to move but once. And I said, this is the house I believe God wants to have. And he was crying. He said, well, preacher, I believe you're supposed to have it too. I said, would you let me lease it for about 6 months until I get my loan? I said, I need to do some painting and stuff like we wanted. And I said, I don't want to move my stuff at one time. He said, man, I don't want to lease it. He said, I done been down that route before. But he's crying. He pulled out a piece of paper and said, I wrote this down this morning before I come over here to meet you. And he said, I'll lease it on one condition. He said, if you'll pay the lease 6 months in advance, give you time to get your loan and all. I said, that's no problem. I said, I'd be glad to. I said, I'd rather do that. That gives me a commitment, gives me 6 months to get the painting done, get the house like we want it. It was a nice house. It just had awful colors inside. People lived here before we did that leased it from him. They painted some of the awfulest, dark, ugliest colors. And so we had to paint the whole house. I had a man in the church I was taking, Ron Miller. He's in heaven now. And Ron and he was about half crippled. His arm could not raise up. But he said, I'll roll it if you'll cut it in. He said, I can't do the cut. But he said, I'll roll everything. And my wife helped me do some trimming closets where I couldn't get in. She'd get down in some low places. But I did all the trimming, cutting in and trimming. And he did the rolling. And we painted this entire 2,200 square foot house. And then I had a guy come in and did some work on the porch, put us some handrails on the porch. We had steps, didn't have handrails. And it was 3 or 4 steps, and it was by law supposed to have handrails. And then out in my garage, we had this one step going down. You walk out the door and it steps straight down. And I said, I want a little stoop. So there'd be like a 6 by 6 maybe it's 4x4, a little porch as you go down the garage, a little step down, made it nice. And we had to do some other stuff. And of course, I've done a lot since then. And then after we got it done, Miss Judy Ely, she's like mom, she's my adopted mama. She lives here, and she's been our friend for 10 years. And her and the two other ladies come over here and clean the house up. After we got all the paint done, they cleaned it from top to bottom, shampooed the carpet, then helped us move in and get set up. And we've been here almost 10 years. March will be 10 years. And it's been a great 10 years here. We've had some battles, but we enjoyed here in East Tennessee. I guess I'm going to go to heaven from here. My wife's favorite house, I guess, this beside the log house. This is her favorite house. This is the house of her dreams. We always wanted a country house, a farmhouse with a wraparound porch. It's 2 stories. And we got a wraparound porch, and this is where I'm at now is a porch, but it was a big deck. And the deck it was 20-some years old, so we tore the deck down. And 2 years ago, right in the middle of my cancer, I had a guy come in and build this porch. And it's been so enjoyable. I come out here in the mornings like this and sit, and it's an old-fashioned porch. It's got a big country beam. You can see it if you look up. See the big country beam, and it's got the pine knot gyp up on the ceiling, and it's got these pickets here on the side. It's got a picket, the old pickets around me, and we got antiques, if you'll see. We got antiques, all kind of stuff on the walls, and so we got it decorated. Then we got another little stoop over here. If I can show you, we got a stoop right there, and I've got a little table with an umbrella. We got 2 antique chairs so we can sit out here and eat if we want to. If we had guests, we got room for them to eat. And so we fixed it up really nice, and I put a new roof on it a couple of years ago and used 6-inch gutters. The gutters on the 2-story wasn't carrying the water, so we went from 5 to 6-inch gutters. I got a guy coming on pressure wash. It needs to be pressure washed. And then I got some painting to do on the pickets, and the rails need to be painted, step rails and all. And then I got some painting, some doors. I put in some new doors. I got to get those painted. So I got a lot of odd end jobs to do, but we love it. Hey, Brother Reuben. Hey, Miss Faye. And so it's been a good life here, 10 years. And so we love it. I guess God's going to let us go to heaven from here. And so thank the Lord. It's been great. And so I'm going to sing another song. This is one of my favorite songs. I've sung it several times in the last couple of months. I'm teaching Sunday morning in our Sunday school class, Victory class at church. And we had about 100 in there, I guess. Had about 100 yesterday, good class. And our pastor and our Sunday school teacher is leaving today for Brazil. They'll be in Brazil for about 7 or 8 days. Come back next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow. So I'm filling in Sunday school, and then Brother Roger Green is coming to preach all day Sunday for our pastor. So we're looking for a good day, but I'll be teaching. And I know Brother Mark will want me to sing. And so this is what I'm probably going to sing. When I survey all the good things that come to me from above, if I could count all the blessings from the storehouse of love, I'd simply ask for a favor of Him beyond mortal men. I'm sure He would grant it again and again. I want to stroll, hey Christina, heaven with you some glad day, Alicia. All my troubles and heartaches truly vanished away. We'll enjoy all the beauties where all things are new. I want to stroll over heaven with you. We'll review old acquaintance with the friends we once knew, and we'll meet all our loved ones, and we'll see Jesus too. That will be a glad reunion. There'll be so much to do when I stroll over heaven with you. I want to stroll over heaven with you some glad day, when all the troubles and heartaches truly vanished away. We'll enjoy all the beauties where all things are new. I want to stroll over heaven with you. I want to stroll over heaven with you. good old song, Supper Time in Heaven. We're going to stroll all over heaven with you. Hey, Miss Alicia. Hey, Miss Christina. Hope you and your family's doing well. I'll sure tell her hello. She'll be glad to know that you tuned in. I'll tell her you said howdy. We miss y'all too. We'd love to see y'all. Hope you and the family are doing well. Give my love to your husband and all the kiddos. I'm sure they're about grown by now. We miss everybody down that way. Made a lot of friends while we were down there. So hope to see you again sometime soon. Well, I'm going to get off of here. Just a couple things to remind you of. Now, I'm talking to my publisher this week. The book publisher is setting up a conference call. I'll be speaking to him at the end of the week. And as soon as we talk, then everything's a go. I'll be pre-selling my books probably by the end of this week or the first of next week. My hardback copies, special editions, signed, numbered editions will go on sale no later than next week. And we'll start selling those. Right now, it looks like sometime in September, toward the middle or end, they should be back. They'll go on Amazon, and you'll be able to buy them from me or from Amazon. I'm going to order the first 200 copies myself. There's only going to be a 1,000 hardback copies, and then we'll go to paperback, and it'll be released after the hardbacks are sold. But this special hardback is a numbered, signed edition, 1 through 1,000, and it's going to have about 50 pages of pictures. The paperback will not have the pictures. It's going to be over 400 pages. Not sure until they get it set up. It's already edited, but they got it set up with the margins and the pictures. It's probably going to be 400 to 450 pages hardback. The cover's already designed. The recommendations already in from the preachers that read it. Everything's ready. I've just got to put my pictures on a thumb drive and mail them to my publisher, and I'll do that as soon as I talk to him this week. And then the books will go on pre-sale. I will sell them online here. You'll be able to buy them from me or wait until they come on Amazon and buy them from Amazon. But if you want numbers 1 through 200, you'll have to buy them from me because I'm getting the first 200. And then if I sell those quicker than I imagine, I'll buy some more off Facebook, off Amazon myself. He'll close the site long enough for me to buy mine. Author's copies is what they call them. And he'll shut down the site, and I'll buy mine straight from Amazon at author's price, and then you can buy them from me. But right now, I'm going to have the first 200. So if you want one, you'll have to buy them from me to start with, and then they'll go on pre-sale on Amazon. But you won't get them until they come back, but I'll take your money to pre-sell them, and so you can claim your copy if you want a special number. You can claim your copy. I'll write it down as soon as it comes, and they ship them to my house. I will absolutely have it shipped to you immediately. So probably by the first of the week, we will start. Hey, Brother Billy out in Kansas, I was talking about you this weekend. I was talking about the meeting out there, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'll be talking to you before then. I'll give you a call. Looking forward to being out there for a few days with you. And I'm coming back to Missouri to preach on that Sunday through Tuesday with Brother Thomas. And so we've got 2 meetings in one. So that'll be wonderful to see you guys and see some other friends. And so the book will be ready. Everything's ready. I talked to the publisher in just a couple of days, and we'll be getting everything finalized. I got to send him all the pictures on thumb drive, and that's it. And so I think for the time he gets it and sets it up in the margins and gets it set up on computer, he'll send it to me to look it over, and as soon as I approve it, it'll be about 10 days from then until the books are shipped to my house, and the rest of them are shipped to Amazon, and as Amazon takes over theirs, I'll have 200 copies, the first 200, and then the last 800 Amazon will control until they're sold. And then the paperback will come out, and the paperback will be there perpetual, but you'll never be able to buy another hardback. Once they're gone, they're gone. There'll be no more. I've instructed my son, my family, not to print any more hardbacks. One set of 1,000, 1 through 1,000, numbered, signed with pictures, and after they're sold, there'll be no more hardbacks with pictures. It'll just be the paperback with the script, the manuscript, and the testimonials, but no pictures. So if you want a copy showing all the pictures in a numbered, signed edition, you'll have to pay a little extra. Well, it's going to be quite a bit extra, and you'll have to buy the hardback. And so I'll have them for sale, and Amazon will have them for sale. And so anyway, I may be able to do them a little better than Amazon, but I doubt it. If you've got Prime, you won't have to pay any shipping. But if you buy them from me, you'll have to pay shipping and tax. All that'll be included. So we'll have the amount probably, of course, sure by next week when I start pre-selling, the amount will be finalized. And so the hardback's going to be quite a bit more than the paperback will be, but because it's a special edition, and printing the pictures is going to be higher. Printing hardback is much more expensive. So when you see the price, don't get all upset. And so I can't believe I'll pay that for a book, but it's a hardback special edition, and there'll never be any more of them. So it's a collector's item. And so because I only live one time, and this is about my life, and the publisher has insisted that I not give them away at a cheap price, that I mark it as a price worthy of what I consider my life to have been. And I don't think I've done a lot, but it seems like there's a lot that people think I've done. And the book seems to tell a story that I never knew was written, a story that God did miracles, things that I'd just forgotten about. And as I begin to remember and write, I begin to say, did God really let me see all this? And it's just going to be absolutely amazing for you to read. Everyone that's read it, Dr. Ron Comfort, his recommendation was so sweet. And he wrote me when he sent me the recommendation, he said, brother, I wished I'd had this when I graduated from college in 1961. He said it would have changed my ministry. And that was so kind of him, because Dr. Comfort, started Ambassador Bible College and has been an evangelist for over 50 years. And he's just a mighty man of God, been my friend for many years. When he started Ambassador, he came to my church when I was in Salisbury and presented the work. I was one of the first churches he came to. And then I went to his school the first year they were in business, and set up the big gospel tent for them to have their first heritage meeting. And all the preachers that preach had been preaching 50 years or more. Harold Seitler, Tom Malone, Lee Robertson, Ralph Sexton Sr., Talbert Moore. All the preachers there were preachers that had been preaching 50 years or more. And I set the big old gospel tent up for the heritage meeting at Ambassador Baptist College. And that was back in the late 80s. And man, what a blessing. I think that's in the book. And so when he wrote me and told me about what he said about, wished he'd had it when he graduated from college and went into the ministry, it was a real compliment. Of course, there's several other men, Brother Krieger on here, he wrote some for the recommendation. The only living pastor that was a part of my ordination, Dr. Nelson Wright, he preached one of my messages at my ordination. He's in his 80s, pastors down in China Grove, North Carolina, and he wrote a recommendation. And then Brother Comfort, and then my pastor, and then Brother Kenny Baldwin is writing a recommendation for the paperback, and so is Brother Comfort. Down in Texas, Brother Pope, Johnny Pope. He said he wouldn't have it in time for the paperback, for the hardback, but he would for the paperback, because he's got 2 other books he's doing introductions for and having to read, and plus he's so busy, and Brother Kenny Baldwin is as well. So those guys are going to write me one to go on the paperback edition, but it's not on the hardback. So I've got 6 men recommendations, all great men of God, men that have had an impact on my life, and I'm honored they would write. And so that's coming. Then also, too, help me here on the Facebook and the social media. Become a subscriber. For the next 10 that become a subscriber, I'm going to send you one of my books that I've written, just one of my books, just one I choose. And if you've bought some books from me, I'll send you something you don't have. But I'll send the book to you free of charge. If you'll just subscribe, it's only 99 cents a month. There's places on my Facebook, there are pages that ask you to become a subscriber. You hit that Facebook link, it'll take you to a secure page for 99 cents a month, less than $1 a month. You can become a subscriber. That'll go in my Facebook account. And I'm praying for God to give me 250, 300 subscribers. And that'll help me take care of the needs to expand my social media on Spotify and YouTube and Facebook to help us reach the world. I've got something I'm working on for the next few weeks that we're going to do a worldwide Reach the World with the Gospel podcast, a one-night event to where we're going to have just a message to reach the world. And I'm going to reach out to missionaries around the world that will try to get their church congregations or congregations together to air it on a big screen, and people all over the country to have people in. And I try to get lost neighbors, friends, and family. And I'm going to do a message, a gospel message, me and one more preacher probably, are going to do 2 messages on a special night on reaching the world with the gospel, taking the gospel to the world podcast. And that's going to be announced here in just a couple of days about that coming up in just a few weeks. And then also, too, my new book. And then also I start meetings in 2 weeks. I head to Kentucky Labor Day weekend, Sunday through Wednesday, in LaGrange, Kentucky at Grace Baptist Church. And then the end of September, I'll be down in China Grove, North Carolina, all day Sunday, and 2 different churches. And then the tent meeting starts on the 29th on Monday. I'll be there for the whole week of the tent. The Browders will be singing. Deborah Perry and Jaden's Call will be singing. Brother Jonathan Wilburn will be there leading the music. The former piano player for Gold City will be there playing the piano. And I'll be there helping out. So that'll be in Salisbury, China Grove area, beginning September 29th. October, I'll be in South Carolina in 2 different churches on 2 different Sundays. I'll be in North Carolina up in Reedsville at my good friend Brother Dwayne King up at Piedmont Baptist Church. I'll be there with him in October. And then in November, I'll be with Brother Billy Kringer the first Sunday in November, the first Sunday through Wednesday. I'll be with him in Council Grove, Kansas. And then I'll leave on that Friday heading back toward Missouri. Stop off in Missouri on Saturday. Preach for Brother Thomas Jefferson in St. James, Missouri. And that will be on a Sunday through a Tuesday. So we got a pretty big schedule. I've got a couple other preachers that are asking me to come this fall for a Sunday morning. So I'll probably get a couple more booked over in North Carolina, maybe here in Tennessee. So as God opens the doors, we're going to go. Already starting the book in 2026. I got a revival booked in January 26 already. So if you're interested in having us, you need to book us now, because I'm not going to be booking many meetings. It'll be a limited number, especially just on Sundays. I'm going to do mostly Sundays, and then a couple short meetings, Sunday through Tuesday, Sunday through Wednesday, or camp meetings where I preach once or twice at the most. And so if you're interested, call us, let us know. We'd love to get you scheduled, get you on the calendar. Well, hope you have a good day. Today's Monday, starting a new work week. Be careful, be safe if you're traveling. Pray for me and my wife. Pray for my physical needs. Continue to pray for God to strengthen me. Pray for the meetings coming up, that God will anoint me as He always has. Every time I've stood, I've prayed for the special anointing. I need that again so desperately. Pray God will save souls and use us to be an encouragement to pastors and churches wherever we go. Thank you. I love you. Thank you for being a friend. And if I don't get to see you again on Facebook, and Jesus comes before we meet again, I'll see you somewhere up above the treetops.